I'm Rebecca King Ferraro.
And I'm Michael Sean Breeden, and you're listening to Conversations on Dance.
Today on Conversations on Dance, we are joined by Moses Pendleton. Moses has been one of America's most innovative and widely performed choreographers and directors for over 40 years. A co-founder of the groundbreaking Pilobolus Dance Theater in 1971, he formed his own company, MOMIX, in 1980. Mr. Pendleton has also worked extensively in film, TV, and opera, and as a choreographer for ballet companies and special events. We talk with Moses about his unique trajectory to dance and directing performances, the founding of Pilobolus and MOMIX, and his production of Alice See MOMIX in Alice with Performing Arts Houston on September 16th and 17th at Cullen Theater, Wortham Center. This performance is perfect for all ages and tickets start at $39. Visit performingartshouston.org for tickets and more information. See all upcoming events from Performing Arts Houston at performingartshouston.org/events or click the link in the show notes.
Moses, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I've been aware of your work for ages, and we've long wanted to have you on and talk about you're just a real vanguard of the industry. But having not had you on before, we always love to start at the beginning and just go all the way back to sort of when you first became aware of dance and what made you want to explore it and what those early years in dance were like for you.
I began on a farm in northern Vermont. So my basic structure is farming, skiing, English literature, and accidents led to dance and Pilobolus and MOMIX. That's where it comes from. But the beginnings, the roots of my roots were agri roots in the northeast kingdom of Vermont, Lyndonville, little gem in the green, and that's where I got my start. And my father was someone that was quite keen on creating the perfect Holstein Friesian cow. And these are the black and white that I showed you a picture of, Holstein Friesian. And his dream became my dream, and to create the perfect cow. It wasn't really a dairy farm. We're really into breeding and sculpture and things like that. I spent a lot of time studying the anatomy of Holsteins and showing them at local fairs around New England. But to make a long story short, my father passed away when I was 12. So he was gone. That dream was gone. And I moved on to my mother, knowing how attached I was to my father, sent me not to ballet school in the summers, but to a ski racing camp in Mount Hood, Oregon, to train with the Austrian ski team, a place called Timberline Lodge. It was built during FDR. Timberline, yes, that's where I.
Yeah, I've been there. Summer. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a fantastic place, and on the glacier, that's where I learned to ski well. So these Austrian skiers, Pepe Grandheimer and André Molterer, famous skiers from the '60s, who have retired and now they're instructors, but they still maintain the gleam in their eye and the enthusiasm and the outrage and the courage to go downhill very fast. And they taught me that. They were my surrogate family. But of course, later on, when I when we formed Pilobolus, and then this one of our early works in MOMIX is a piece on skis. Obviously, might not have done that if my background was actually not of ballet, but of athletics and skiing. And so whenever you take whatever it is that you make, if you're true to your creative spirit, you will draw almost unconsciously on your past and your things. And so I draw on the agra and the plant and the soil and the farming aspect of it, as well as the athletic part. And then put on top of that, I went to Dartmouth and graduated in English literature, and I spent most of my time there not knowing what I wanted to do. But at least you could read some cool books and meet some inspiring professors, and that's what I did. But that also informed me to kind of have develop maybe a kind of poetic sense about whatever it is that you do. You just have to look at it in a certain way. These are formative experiences. I must say also, just to to add my Agra connections. Pre-Pilobolus, this had to be maybe it's 1968 or something. I had came back to my father's farm in Vermont, and they rented the fields to a herd of Holstein Friesians. And we put together in the summer, pre-Pilobolus, we put together a show that would feature 50 head of milking Holstein Friesian cows. And this was a theater. A lot of people don't know that the first theater we had was called the Vermont Natural Theater. And during at my family farm, we invited 50 witnesses, including Ellen Lovell, who was at the time was the head of the Council on the Arts in Vermont. And we sat her on an adjacent hillside in my family farm. And I performed by putting over a white sheet over my head and leading a herd of 50 milking Holsteins. And the experience that the program read was you would have an experience of stampeding Holsteins coming directly at you. And cows, being as curious as you know them to be, would follow wherever I went on this angled, this hillside, green, black and white, green grass, and a white ghost, Casper-like ghost figure that I played to draw them left or right, and eventually running full speed right at the audience. And just before the cows ran over the audience, there was a ditch, and I dove into the ditch out of sight. And as soon as I was gone, they lost their object of pursuit. And this just started, someone rang a bell, and they just stopped and started grazing. And the little bell would ring, and the audience was encouraged to move off into the next piece, which was a dancer doing an imitation of a bird on one leg on a spruce stump. But it was all it was a 3-mile hike around my family farm with all these little interactions of human bodies and nature and between cows and trees and grass. Anyway, that was the ritual running of the Holsteins, which was these were the formative years that got us to think, our crazy, wild, escapist imaginations, there seems to be a market for it. And so, later on, Pilobolus and I, as I say, I went to Dartmouth to be on the ski team. I was on the ski team. And the second day of ski practice, I was playing soccer, and that's what the ski teams did in the fall. The most dangerous exercise you can imagine: playing soccer with people who are athletic but have no idea how to play soccer. So
I bet that's true.
They end up the athletes end up kicking each other more than the ball. And I was the result of that, and got a very badly broken leg my second day in class at Dartmouth. And I was in the hospital with a cast up to my thigh. Ski career shattered. I had no idea. My mother was one floor up dying of breast cancer. So it was a bad year. So that when my parents were gone at a very early age, I'm there with the cast on my leg. No ski career. Got way behind in all the academics, which was difficult up there. The freshmen at Dartmouth had 3 years of calculus before they took Calculus 1 at Dartmouth. I'd never heard of calculus. You can imagine the terror, that kind of thing. So, but the short part of this is that I took a dance class at Dartmouth to get myself and leg recuperated to get back on the ski team, and then felt that my dance instructor at the time at Dartmouth much more attractive than my ski coach, and I just went with the flow, or with the flower, or however you say it. But so I got involved with dance and didn't get back on the ski team, and that's how Pilobolus formed itself.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious because
you're starting. I'm long-winded about this.
No, that's okay. It's fascinating. So you're starting dance at a later age than some would, probably than your peers around you, but you're also starting choreography, it sounds like, kind of at the same time. So how did how is that a challenge to create dance without maybe the vocabulary that other people had? But how is it also, like, I can see it also being very freeing, that you can really do whatever you want because you don't feel kind of constrained by maybe that dance vocabulary that everyone else.
But yes, I never think of myself as a dance choreographer. I'm more a kind of a physical visual artist. I see, for example, I see pictures. As much as you love to hear me talk, I basically am a visualist who loves to blabber. When you give me
that's
the
why
chance,
we have a podcast.
No, but yeah, that's right. That's what a modcast here. Yeah. No, so that was very normal for me to go and work either with cows, dried cabbage heads, or highly trained dancers in the MOMIX company. For me, I go in and I don't train them to dance. But I hopefully just release them to find the dance within them and then let that go in improvisational ways that it goes into the almost mad mosaic by Moses, that it has an alchemical principle to it. In other words, you don't really think about what you're making. You just put some various elements together, put it in the mix and spin it. And hopefully it comes out, a golden idea for a new dance, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's leaden and it's black and it sinks to the bottom of your mud puddle. You've got to, the training is, and the fun of it is to do it collectively. At a certain level, I would go in and get, I would be more a catalyst for choreography. Go and inspire them like my Professor Cox inspired me. I have to be like him and give them some inspiration that allows them to find, their dance. And then maybe we do it in a way, and I, with an outside eye, would try to help direct it. I also use many other elements to create an image that might be, you use dance in part, but it's a mixture of lighting, sound, temperature in the audience. I get most concerned about the temperature because, all of this has an effect on how whatever it is you've worked so hard at doing is perceived by an audience. So I have to, in order to create, I like to go outside and see what it is that Moses is making, and that makes, it perhaps edits a bit in the early stages of creativity. It's an interesting process that I've been involved in, and it's not dissociated from writing poems for romantic poetry classes or thinking up ways to amuse my friends at a dinner party. I've been interested in entertaining in a way, and then that's something that's been fun for me. It keeps me young, and now, there's 50 years that separate me from the company, and in the early days we were all the same age. That was also fascinating to go in. These young, what are they? They're pre Gen Z. They're millennials. What would they be in their early 20s now? What are they?
Early 20s is still Gen Z.
Still Gen Z, I think.
It's still Gen Z. All right.
Yeah.
Give me an idea. Yeah, Gen Z could be the next full evening work. Something about in that strata. You're talking about evolution in history. People put themselves not just Republicans and Democrats and atheists and Catholics, but Gen Z, millennials, and boomers. I'm a boomer, and I can't get out of it. I'm a late boomer, a very late boomer. Anyway, so, but in terms of inspiration, many times I will, for right now in August, we're rehearsing for two new shows that are going out in all over the world, in Italy and in the US, two different programs. But at the same time, in the afternoon, I try to create periods in the day where you get certain things of reality, done, the dishes done, and the dance is rehearsed. But then the da-free movement hour, the nightclub in the afternoon. So we go over to our barn studio, and I, like a DJ, will find cool music and everything that will create the ambience. I work very synesthesically. You know what that means? There was a movement called synesthesia, in which painters would attribute whatever they painted to what music they were listening to that drove their brain to make those visual decisions. And I'm a firm believer and am of sound mind that you what you're listening to might be very attributable, or what you're looking at is very attributable to what you're actually listening to. So when we go to make a new dance, more like a Bono or Edge or something, I'm trying to make a score for them that gives them a place to play in, a playpen, an acoustical playpen. I mean, the studio needs to be worked on acoustically. I have speakers in each corner. The barn, we don't call it a studio, we call it the barn. Everybody loves the barn. It was actually a renovated horse barn on our property. But we go out to the barn, and now I realize it needs to be organized acoustically. And this is how I'm making the piece. I'm trying to get up the level of acoustics in the studio so that when people are out doing some kind of imitation of an octopus, they do it in the spirit of this particular sound. And it might help them, like a therapist. How do you get someone to free up their blocks, unblock them? And then you see that ultimately all of us are infinitely creative. You just have to release those forces. And I do it through humor, and being a good-natured guy and trying to make it fun, because in the end, anything and any kind of work you do, if you can make it fun, you probably do the work better. And you're not like shutting down; you're actually expanding like sunlight, on a morning pond.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, it's
right.
I can just let you go all day, and I love this discussion of creativity and your exploration of your own mind, essentially. But how did this all how did you reach a point where having a company like Pilobolus, or then later MOMIX, became the sort of vessel for this creativity? At what point did you decide we need some sort of formal vessel for these explorations?
A very valid question there. We were very fortunate in the early days that our instructor, Allison Chase at Dartmouth, one of our first assignments was to make our own dance. The idea of that we were making a dance, dancers who were not dancers, but knew how to knew how to cross-country ski, knew the other person, Stephen Johnson, was Dartmouth's #1 pole vaulter. So we start on a stage. We thought, what we take what we know and then put it together. He actually did amazing solo. He ran down the center of the aisle with a real pole vault and pole vaulted onto the stage, out of the audience, hit the floor, rolled up, did a back handspring, and splattered against the wall. And I said, I've never seen anything like this. This was pre-Cirque du Soleil, this kind of thing. This is late 60s. Incredible. And so it was physical, but wild and put in another context. It's like putting running Holsteins in your theater, or putting pole vault in theater. That kind of thing was fun and exciting, and we were getting academic credit for it. Anyway, we did this one piece called Pilobolus, which is got us going. It was a very athletic, sculptural, again, putting three bodies and making them look as one thing was the thing. But it went someone who was the agent to Frank Zappa, friendly with him, invited us down to Smith College to perform this piece, Pilobolus. In their first month of taking a dance class, we're performing for 3,000 screaming Smith girls to open Frank's. Do you know what I'm talking about? Frank Zappa.
Yeah.
We opened for Zappa at Smith, and Zappa came, and the place went wild. And you're asking me, why? How did you get into it? What encouraged you? This was just almost an accident that really sparked our collective imaginations that we could go further with this, whatever it is. And Frank actually came out and was quoted as on the cover of Time Out magazine in London. Frank Zappa loves Pilobolus, theater of the very far out. He didn't call us a dance company. He called us theater of the very far out. I remember that as students going back and Zappa said, "Guys, that was incredible. Can you?" And they had Flo and Eddie of the Turtles who were with him as well. It was an incredible concert. But he said, "Can you come to Iowa City the next day?" And I went, "Oh, Mr. Zappa, we love to do that, but we have a math exam, at 10 o'clock at dark." But we went back to Hanover charged. We use that word a lot. What charges you? What gives you a charge? That we were charged. We sat in a cemetery, the old Dartmouth cemetery, eating lunch, the three of us, Pilobolus. We said, I think we got something going here. And then we had enough, and we just built something out of nothing, really, and creating this kind of theater of the very far out that became Pilobolus, that transformed into MOMIX, I guess.
Tell us about that transition to MOMIX.
Well, Pilobolus was really an artistic collaborative, and I just think, like any rock band, the collaborations get a little stale, and it doesn't feel so creative. And I was quite interested in going out and doing something a bit more where I have more actual control. That's changed now. I really don't care about control. But I also saw, that I was doing the same thing that I was telling you earlier about every beast has a different body to explore musically, artistically, and you want to bring that beast out. It could be a very quiet, a white lotus. If we're looking at certain ballerinas, that they're so delicate, you can't even breathe in their presence. They'll fall over. I love that frailty, and so I was seeing a real diversity of human forms, feminine, masculine, collectively, individually. That was very exciting. And the philosophies that you put out, the messages, really are kind of what I think about doing. And so I'm feeling more responsible now as to what I say and how I say it. Whereas in the early days, I had no idea what I was saying or why. I just said it. And I get in trouble. I get a lot of trouble. And so and it's different because I've always lived this collective mind. So I'm kind of prefacing my latest and most powerful passion is photography. I have really found a release in working solo. I call it in my little joker de parole, my puns, Sol, S-O-L, 2 words, etude, sun studies, and it's solitude. Yeah, and I go every day studying and editing and taking more pictures of. It's kind of like the shrinking of Monet in his latter years. He was a world traveler and everything, but he moved to Giverny, outside of Paris, with his wife, and to create a little microcosm of the world, including his lily pond, which was his ocean. And when he was really someone who was very attracted to the sea. And so he made his own little, as an artist, you can imagine enough. It doesn't take much. If you're a really good artist, it doesn't take much to spark the imagination to create worlds all around you in your own backyard and in his own lily pond, and then paint them and study them and worship them in a way and live by them. This is what I'm finding the biographies of famous painters and whatever, and I'm respecting of their work. Monet always comes to mind because of his connection to the outside, to the plein air aspect of creativity. That's something that I grow tens of thousands of sunflowers currently. This is part of my choreography, if you will. It's just keeping them alive from deer and parasites and inclement weather. I have a lot of babies in the basket, tens of thousands of giant Russian mammoths that I'm growing in order to show them with a video I make with my cell phone. I can do everything. My right hand is my DP, and my left hand is my actor. And
Right.
how I'm always filming my hand being the dance of my hand with a flower, sketching spots of shaving cream in a mud puddle to create kind of Rodin-like sculptures.
I want to hear about how all these outside things are in like the photography you're doing and caring for nature, for like raising sunflowers, and how does that impact the work you do? Like let's talk specifically about a work that will be seen at Performing Arts Houston later, which is Alice. And like how does that outside work impact what the creative process is in the studio?
Okay, so for example, my passion for flowers is manifested, or you wouldn't be surprised to see, a garden of flowers manifested through MOMIX bodies and stretch fabric and projections in Alice, which is what we did. It was in Alice in Wonderland as well. The plant world is another area that finds itself easily in the whatever works that MOMIX has ever done. Even to the point there are pieces of it in baseball. So I'm always moving in the floral footstep, even though the flowers might be like lilies floating on a liquid surface that was reflecting something above. That was the whole thing about reflections. The one thing about Alice, and I must say, it's not Alice in Wonderland. It's MOMIX's Alice. Right. And so by that, we mean that we used Alice to inspire us to make our own MOMIX show inspired by Alice in Wonderland or Alice Underground, or as many people who come disgruntled from seeing Alice, these are all Alice Cooper fans. It could be that. There is a part of it. It's all in the word MOMIX. It's never one thing. It's a mix of light, imagery, iconic characters drawn from Alice in Wonderland, like you were dreaming Alice in Wonderland. And there's a splash of the Cheshire Cat and a movement of a tall lady, and just enough things to because we were playing with the fact that most people know Alice in Wonderland. So that is the first movement. The first movement is what we think the audience understands when you say Alice or Alice in Wonderland. They all want to bring their kids, right? Everyone was influenced by Disney. Just recently, someone asked me, were you inspired by the book? I said I was more inspired by other people's inspirations of the book, namely Disney. Right. Disney I grew up on Alice in Wonderland only through how Disney and their writers and animators translated Alice in Wonderland. And in fact, in my research about Lewis Carroll and Dodgson and the initial book, you never would have heard of Alice in Wonderland if it wasn't for the fortunate occurrence of having one of the great illustrators, Tenniel, illustrate Carroll's first book. So it was really a book that you looked at as much as you read. And it's always being translated visually. That's what Lewis Carroll hoped would happen with his book originally. His main goal in the end was to have Alice in Wonderland as a musical comedy on the West End in London, of which he oversaw over 100 attempts to do Alice in Wonderland, mostly to his delight. That's how he was doing dramaturgy for a live show. So it's a lot. It's fascinating, and so many people throughout. So it was always meant to be visualized, illustrated, played with. Another inspiration was Salvador Dali, who was commissioned to make 12 paintings based on Alice in Wonderland. And if you didn't know that, first off, you would have no idea what it is you're looking at. You would say, that's a very interesting Dali. But you see, he would take liberties. And so what Alice is doing is bringing out the Alice in you, or in Moses, or in MOMIX, or in Dali, or in Tenniel. That's what this book has been doing. And what did Disney draw from the book? Anyway, so we took a lot of liberties with that. We had permission, therefore, to go ahead and make something that is not the book. The real Lewis Carroll aficionados will go away from the show a bit perplexed, perhaps, because they want to say, "Where's the trial? Why isn't it? What is Humpty Dumpty doing in Alice in Wonderland?" Of course, Disney mixed Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. They just took characters out of one and the other and mixed them together. And basically, it's about going down the rabbit hole. And going down the rabbit hole, kind of in today's kind of uptight political scene, is a negative. For me, that was always a positive. That was almost a necessity. And we've made a show using projections, music, strange dancing, and referencing Alice in Wonderland to some kind of experience where you just go nonstop down a MOMIX rabbit hole. And hopefully, you were inspired by it and walk out with a little less gravity in your step.
We're excited for the audiences at Performing Arts Houston to get that inside look into your brain and your art and everything that inspires you. It's been so wonderful to hear about all of that. So we hope everyone will come out September 17th to see Alice.
Moses, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciated it.
Conversations on Dance is part of the ACAST Creator Network. For more information, visit conversationsondancepod.com.